Well, hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on our midweek Bible study here. And we've been going through the book of Judges, and we're going to close and finish the book of Judges today with chapter 21. And this has been kind of a bumpy ride as we have gone through Joshua and Judges and talked about many things that have occurred with the battles and the interactions with other tribes and the conquering of the land. It's been a tumultuous ride and a lot of disturbing things that we've noticed in some of the interactions and the fighting that has gone on, and things that have been a little challenging to deal with. And as we close out Judges chapter 21, we will see again the continuation of that. And as it closes out in the last verse of chapter 21, it kind of puts a summary and brings us to a conclusion. So where do we go after this? I plan to start next week's lesson in the book of Ruth. Ruth was the story occurred in the same time frame as the book of Judges. And so what going through the book of Ruth will do is we're already coming in with a mindset of what things were like during the time of the Judges and what the nation of Israel was like, what some of the pagan, non-Jewish, non-Israel nations were like. And so our mind is in that location. And so I thought it would be nice to come in and do the book of Ruth. It's a short book. It has the easiest Hebrew in it, and it has some very interesting, uplifting and encouraging things in it, some things that talk about the Messiah coming. And so I think it'll just be a fun diversion from what we've been through in the book of Judges and Joshua, and to go in the book of Ruth. So we'll be starting that next week. So I hope that's something you can look forward to. And maybe if some of this has been kind of tough during the book of Judges here, we'll get into something a little bit lighter during the book of Ruth. So with that being said, we're going to close out the book of Ruth today. And we find that things are just not good in Israel. And so as verse 1 starts, that the men of Israel had sworn in Mizpah that they shouldn't give uh, any of their daughters to Benjamin as wives, which is kind of interesting because the tribes normally intermarried. A wife of one tribe would want to stay married to a husband or be married to a husband of the same tribe and keep the lineage there. It does seem that maybe that wasn't so strict, and maybe there was some of the wives or the women, I would say, going from one tribe to the next tribe. But so this is kind of interesting. Why did we even think of that? Why was it even brought up? And it has to do with how the tribes of Israel treated the those warriors and the men in the tribe of Benjamin. And we don't quite get the gist of it right from the beginning. We didn't quite catch it in the previous chapter, chapter 21, but chapter 20, excuse me, in chapter 20, but in chapter 21, we will get the full understanding of what the Israelites did to the people of the tribe of Benjamin. And in fact, it was so concerning for them. They were finally starting to have a realization of what they really did and coming to a place of remorse. And we see that. And again, we're trying to fill in between the blanks here because the verses don't tell us this in a strong way. But when we put the pieces together, we find out that the children of Israel were very, very remorseful for what they did and how they treated those in the tribe of Benjamin. So much so in verse 2 that they came to the house of God and they were there all day and lifted up their voices and wept sore and lamenting in verse 3, saying, why has this come to pass? They were kind of thinking that there was divine interaction here. Again, we understand that sometimes we do this as human beings. Something will happen and we'll say, well, why, God, did you let this happen? when in reality we did it all ourselves and God just kind of backed away because we wouldn't listen. And that's what the realization is here is they made this vow in Mitzvah that they're going to withhold their daughters. We're going to find that they came and actually slaughtered all of the Benjamites, the men, the women, the children. They burned their cities to the ground, and all that was left were 600 Benjamites. That's it. And the weight of this was finally hitting on them in verse 3 that they said, how is there going to be only one tribe? There's going to be a tribe missing in Israel. And again, they're bringing in the name of the Lord God. It's the name of Yahweh. So it means that they're serious, but yet they're trying to, I don't know, maybe they're trying to blame God for some of this. I don't believe that's correct. But anyway, that's human nature, trying to say that, this happened because God allowed it to be, when in reality, they did it all themselves. So they're trying to rectify this. They made some very foolish vows. They did some very foolish things that they regretted. And so what do they try to do? Probably the same thing we try to do. We try to make amends. We try to do a good deed. We try to throw an extra dollar in the offering plate. We try to offer and do some time in good service, and they did the same thing. The people rose early, verse 4, built an altar, offered burnt sacrifices and peace offerings. And so now they're trying to find some way how to fix this problem. And so they get to verse 5 and they say, is there anybody who didn't come to this great place where we took this vow? Is there anybody who didn't rally behind us and fought against the Benjamites? And surely they'll be put to death. Again, another foolish, foolish vow involving lives and oaths. And if you're not for us, you're against us. And if you're against us, we're going to kill you. Um, Again, this is terrible, but this is what we see playing out. This is real life, and this is how they behaved. Again, without good spiritual leadership and people helping them choose the right way, uh, seems we always go the wrong way. And so, verse 6, they say that they were sorry for what they did to Benjamin. Again, a kind of a reiteration of the earlier verse, and they're saying, well, how are we going to prolong and revive this tribe? Because we just said we're not going to give any of them to intermarry. And so they're looking for any solution. So they're trying to find out if there was any portion of one of the tribes that didn't enter into this um, vow here at Mitzvah. And somebody said, oh, wait a minute. Jabesh Gilead didn't come to the party. And so they took a look at it and looked and found that none of them, um, were part of this. And so what were they going to do? They were going to take action and go and smite the inhabitants of Jabesh Gilead with the sword, everybody, men, women, children, utterly destroy everything in verse 11. You think they would have learned. But again, this was the way of life back then. This was the way of all the pagan cultures, and they were just doing what they had learned to do in conquering the land. And when justice in their mind needed to be dealt with, it was dealt with in this way. So verse 11 kind of had a little bit of a distinction here on what their plan was, that you would destroy every male and every married woman or every woman who was not a virgin. But doing so, and again, nothing, they don't tell anything of what happens between verse 11 and verse 12, the utter destruction that happened and how this must have been just a horrible episode. But through it all, out of however many people were in Jabesh Gilead that lost their lives, there were 400 young ladies who had not um, been defiled by men. They were virgins, and they brought them to the camp at Shiloh. Again, I just can't imagine how terrible this was. But there's a little bit of some things that happen here. If you remember back in chapter 11, we had the story of Jephthah, and Jephthah was a judge, and after he also made a very foolish vow, and he said, if the Lord would prosper me, whatever comes to me and meets me when I get home, I'm going to offer that as a sacrifice. Do you remember that story? Well, his daughter came, and he was also of the tribe of Gilead. And so there seems to be somewhat of a interwoven connection here between these young virgins of Jabesh Gilead, the story of Jephthah, because I'm not sure that everyone believes that his daughter was actually sacrificed, but that she went and they had a feast there, or a dancing feast every year, and the daughters of Jabesh Gilead would go out and celebrate and dance, um, and because of what happened to this young lady who was Jephthah's daughter. So this is what's setting up. And so they got these 400 young virgins. They came to these 600 guys who are hiding in the rock, wondering if they were going to be killed next, but they're in their fortress. Verse 13, the children of Israel come to the children of Benjamin, and they called out peaceably to them and said, okay, we're done. We're not going to kill you. We know you're the only ones left. And they gave them these 400 young virgins so that they could be wives unto them and restart and repopulate the tribe of Benjamin. And so in verse 15, it says they repented again. You'll see this mentioned a few times because of what they did to the tribe of Benjamin. And they said, well, what are we going to do? There's still 200 guys that have no wives. And because we destroyed everyone of the tribe of Benjamin. Here's the clue that they finally gave us here of what they did, that they went and burned their cities and destroyed the wives, the women, the children, everyone from Benjamin, and burned their cities down. And so really there's only 600 Benjamites that exist on the face of the earth. And so there's 200 of them that do not have any wives. So what do? They saying that, we can't give them our wives because of this foolish vow we made. But there is a feast in Shiloh, verse 19, every year where these daughters of Shiloh, as mentioned in verse 21, come out to dance in dances. And I believe this is what's tied in with the story of Jephthah and his daughter, and the bewailing of her virginity, and the daughters of Shiloh coming and singing. And so when they come out, basically what is going on here is they're saying that these men have the ability to go and catch these women and go ahead and take them. Um, I'm gonna have to put you on hold here for a minute. I have a phone call. Okay, sorry for that. I'm able to come back and we'll connect here. So these young ladies from Shiloh would come out, and the uh, men were given permission to come and capture them, abduct them, and take them to be their wives. Again, this is just very, very unthinkable. Um, Really, really hard to think about this actually happening, but this gives you a mindset into what the times were like and what things were like in those days. Again, the Bible records it, and all we can do is try to understand it the best we could. So they're allowed to catch these wives and bring them to themselves, and they obviously, I don't know, caught another 200 or however long this took. And they were even given some warning here in verse 22 that obviously the people aren't going to like this. You would think these daughters would not dance anymore and that they would try to hide them away. Um, just not sure how this all happened, but basically the fathers and the brethren, if they complain that their daughters and sisters are being taken, they're supposed to say, hey, just be favorable to them for our sakes, because we did this horrible thing. And remember that we got to save the tribe of Benjamin. So sum it up in verse 23. They did that. They repaired their cities. They dwelt in them. Everything is going back to normalcy, and the children of Israel kind of went back to life as they knew it, verse 24. But verse 25 is really what sums it all up as to how all this stuff could happen. It said there, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. Um, so that brings us to the end of Judges. Again, a very, very disturbing things that happen, very strange things, but summed up as to what happens when people don't have a strong walk with God, don't have strong direction in their life in a godly manner, and they have influence from other cultures, other lifestyles, other situations that are not following God's word. Um, they don't have strong leadership, and everybody would do what's right in their own eyes. And again, do we see this being repeated today? I'll let you be the judge of that. And but things are just very, very strange. So with that, we leave the book of Judges, and we will pick up with the book of Ruth next week. And I just pray that this has been a blessing to you, and that again, thank you so much for joining this study. And I hope and pray that God will be a strength and encouragement to you, and look forward to engaging with you again next week as we go into the book of Ruth. All right. God bless you all. Bye-bye.